Cincinnati just slapped a 2026 first rounder and a young defensive player on Trey Hendrickson, and that ask could really change the NFL landscape overnight, depending on where Trey Hendrickson goes. But it isn't really about the picks, JT. It's about whether anyone will actually give the guaranteed cash, not the duration, not the actual value, which is apparently not the hang up. It's the guaranteed money that Trey Hendrickson wants and really deserves. 17 and a half seasons, or 17 and a half sack seasons, back-to-back years, led the NFL in pressures, coming off the All-Pro, coming off the Defensive Player of the Year candidacy. What is your opinion on the Bengals wanting a first-round pick for next year? And they also want a young defensive player. Give me your thoughts on that asking price from Cincinnati.
The Bengals don't want to trade away Trey Hendrickson. That's why the asking price is so high. They essentially want to offer that they can't refuse because they don't truly want to part ways with Trey Hendrickson, man.
Right.
It's one of those situations where you're fighting with your girl. She's packing her bags up. She's saying she's about to leave, but she knows she's not about to leave, and you know you're not about to let her leave. The Bengals are trying to find a compromise, and with how bad that defense looked against the Commanders the other night, boy, you giving up a touchdown drive in only 4 plays? Then you were getting carved up by the Eagles' second string offense. They need that brother on the field. They know they need that brother on the field.
Oh, yeah.
AJF, my guy, the Bengals defense is downright atrocious. They did nothing but get worse, and they already were terrible last year. So you tried to say Lou Anarumo was the problem. You remember Lou Anarumo, the dude was a finalist for several head coaching jobs a few years ago.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden he gets fired. He's a bad defensive coordinator. When did this happen? Nobody becomes a bad defensive coordinator overnight.
Right.
Why did Lou Anarumo become bad? Maybe it's because the Bengals decided they didn't want to re-sign Jesse Bates, who still is an all-pro with the Atlanta Falcons. They didn't want to retain Von Bell. Then you have a bunch of misses in the draft, and here you are, once again, not willing to pay your best player on defense the same mistake that the Bengals are attempting to make with Trey Hendrickson is what they made with Jesse Bates. When they went to the Super Bowl, they had a bunch of guys on that unit that they drafted. Now those guys are gone. Now you get rid of Trey Hendrickson. Who else are you going to have? It definitely ain't going to be a guy who had 4.5 sacks 4 years starting in college and Shamar Stewart, and it damn sure ain't anybody else on that defensive line or in that secondary. The Bengals know they got to pay Trey Hendrickson. It's just a matter of who's going to fold first.
Yeah. Is it going to be Hendo? Is it going to be the Bengals? Is it going to be a team that comes forward and just ends up offering them, what they're asking? When I saw this asking price, JT, I was a little jaded because I thought it was kind of light considering what we've seen past superstars, either offensively or defensively, which is actually a pretty good split of the differences with the trade capital with, between offensive, defensive players. And what we've seen them get moved for in the past, because again, you're talking about Trey Hendrickson, back-to-back 17 and a half sack seasons, leading the league in sacks in back-to-back years, having the most pressures in the NFL, the most sacks in the last 2 years, coming off the All-Pro, the DPOY, and even outside of 2022, he hasn't had less than 14 sacks as a Cincinnati Bengal. So he's more than outplayed that 4-year, $60 million deal. And you look over the last 5 years, the last 4 years, if Trey Hendrickson is not first, he is only second to either TJ Watt or Myles Garrett. So we clearly understand, and we don't really have to overstate what Trey Hendrickson has done. But when you look at the types of trades that have happened within recent memory, here's the 2 most recent kind of defensive superstar trades that I think of. Von Miller to the Rams. The Broncos traded Von Miller to the Rams November of 2021. They sent a 2022 second round and a 2022 third round pick. In steps Von Miller. LA wins the Super Bowl, and it was clearly great. You look at the Brian Burns deal. When he went to the Giants, the Panthers traded Brian Burns to the Giants March of 2024, really a sign and trade. Giants sent a 2024 second and a fifth, and then they signed Brian Burns to that big extension. And it was really, kind of a premium move because you had that first and second tier asset and then a big contract. And the contract part is what's going to hold a lot of teams up, right? Like, people don't realize when you trade for a player, you are also trading for their contract. Ding, ding, ding. Trey Hendrickson just so happens to be in the middle of a contract year, and he is a true top-tier, top-end pass rusher. Now, when you look at those defensive trades, okay, there wasn't any first-rounders that were thrown around in there, and if you think about it, the Bengals want a first-rounder, and then if they want a young defensive player, that can probably equate to a first or second-rounder, maybe a third, but like you're kind of leaving the perspective up to the buyer, right? And when you're in this type of market in the NFL, I don't really know if you want to do that. You want to kind of drive the value home so there's not a chance to ask for a discount because they see an absence of value. Now let's look at the three most recent offensive superstar trades. Of course, Russell Wilson to Denver. Denver traded the absolute house for him, 2 firsts, 2 seconds. They had a 5th rounder, a slew of players just for Russell Wilson, and a 4th rounder that came out on the back end. Tyreek Hill was acquired for 5 draft picks, a 1st, a 2nd, a 4th in 2022, and then a 4th and a 6th in 2023. Then he comes in, signs a 4-year, $120 million deal that he's looking to, play the last year of. And then when the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers and they got him in the 2023 first-round pick, which was a number 15 overall, and the 5th rounder, the Packers basically swapped first-rounders with them, went from 15 to 13, got 2 seconds and a 6th. So really the Packers got a first-round pick and 2 seconds. So when you look at the landscape of the 3 offensive superstars that had really required a big haul lately, and then what the Bengals are asking for, but then when you compare that to the defensive hauls, it's an absolutely massive asking price, because at first I'm like, okay, as a real estate agent, I totally understand what they're doing. They're underpricing the property, so it creates attention, and then they drive the price up with a bidding war. But after doing the further research, I'm like, him needing $30 million a year on his deal with the new team, like that is the absolute kicker. You know what I'm saying? So all of this considered, JT, who should be calling, picking up the phone, actually trying to make a move for Trey Hendrickson?
The Carolina Panthers, without a doubt, they're in desperate need of help everywhere on defense, secondary, linebackers, but more importantly, the pass rush. You can negate somewhat having a questionable secondary if you have a high-end pass rush. Trey Hendrickson, despite the age, we know that he still has about 2-3 good years of high-level all-pro caliber play. Yeah. The Panthers are trying to strike hot right now. This is a season where it's not playoffs or bust necessarily for them, but you definitely want to finish this season with at least 7-8 wins, prove that the franchise is heading in the right direction, and they still have a bunch of holes on defense that they didn't address during this offseason. Getting Trey Hendrickson would make things a lot easier for their defensive coordinator in terms of the style of defense that he likes to play. You already got J.C. Horn, so without having a good number 2 corner alongside of him, if you can get a high-level pass rusher like Trey Hendrickson, it definitely is worth the price. The Carolina Panthers, more than likely, they will be using the first-round pick that they would trade to the Bengals for Trey Hendrickson on the edge rusher anyway. Some people feel that they should have went Jalen Walker or James Pierce instead of Ted McMillan.
Mm-hmm.
So when you keep overlooking your defensive problems and you keep ignoring them, eventually you're going to have to make a move. Maybe getting a veteran like Trey Hendrickson is the one to make, although not ideal being it's so late into the off season. The season's just around the corner.
Yeah, very good points there, man. No doubt. I've got a few of them here, so you guys stay with me because I think there are a good bit of people in the NFL who would like to employ a 17.5 sack season in the form of Trey Hendrickson.